need yours as well. That said do not switch off, and it was off, so I turned it on. Don't know if that was the right thing to do, so sorry if it like explodes.
Okay, I think it's time to begin. It's 10 o'clock, so welcome everybody to week 7 of the learning series. I'm Daria Markic, and I'm a project officer on the learning project of the Disasters and Emergencies Preparedness Program. And I'll be facilitating today's session. We're going to be talking about preparedness systems and planning for effective emergency response. I can just turn on my video to say hi very briefly. So hi, I'm Daria. I'll turn it off again. And today I'm joined by 3 speakers. So we've got Hussein Ullah, who's the Head of Preparedness and Advocacy at UN OCHA, Pakistan. So if I just invite him to briefly say hi.
Hi to everyone. Thank you for introducing.
Great. And then I have Glandina Bobson, who's my colleague from the Depth Learning Project, the country learning advisor for Kenya. And she also supports the Disaster Emergency Preparedness Program, Urban Early Warning Early Action Project in Nairobi. Glandina? Hello, good to see you. And then we also have Donna Lagdameo, who's the Senior Policy Officer and Asia Pacific Regional Focal Point at the Red Cross Red Crescent Climate Center in the Philippines. Donna?
Hi everyone. I'm just having problems with what I will press, but I am happy to see you all, although hear you all. I can't press my video though, so...
Oh, you can't? Okay, it doesn't matter. Don't worry about
it. Okay, let's try that later, but then yeah. Hi everyone. Thanks.
Great. Okay, thank you and welcome. And to all our participants, welcome back if you've joined us before. And if you're here for the first time, I want to extend a big welcome to you too. So I'll just briefly explain what the learning series is about. So this is a 10-week series of webinars that's run by the Learning Project, which is part of the Disasters and Emergencies Preparedness Program, which I've mentioned, also known as DEP, and that's co-managed by the START and the CDAP networks. And the Learning Project is hosted at Action Against Hunger UK. And the DEP program itself is made up of 14 projects and focuses on capacity building for local and national actors by investing in collaborative networks. So we're now on week 7. And previous webinars have covered a range of topics from writing case studies and lessons papers to localization and humanitarian collaboration. If you've missed any of these, they're all available in the library on the Learning Platform website, which is disasterpreparedness.ngo/learnings. And I think my colleague is typing this right now in the chat as I said it. So our aim for this session is to explore key successes, challenges, and learnings from initiatives that strengthen preparedness and planning for better response. So our 3 speakers have very different areas of expertise, which I think will make for a very rich session and discussion. And they'll also be sharing recommendations and practical tips that you can go away and apply in your own work. And before we begin, I just want to highlight a few things. So to minimize distraction and background noise, I'll be muting everybody as they come online. So just don't take it personally. If you have any technical issues, if you can't hear us or something's not working, just please message on the chat so you can see the Learning Project. That's my colleague Alice Hale. She'll be monitoring that. Just message her, she'll be happy to help. And we'd like to make this session as interactive as possible. So if you do have any questions, if you want to share your comments, please do. We really welcome those. And we'll aim to leave a few minutes after each presentation for questions and also some time at the end. Before we move into the session outline, I just wanted to, I don't know why this is still like this. I just wanted to, go into definitions of preparedness. This can be very broad. So today we're going to be working with the UN ISDR definition of preparedness, which you can see on the screen. I'm not going to go into great detail now because I'm sure you're all familiar with it, but just to keep the discussion focused and kind of frame it in a particular way, we'll be working with this definition. And that will be made available in the PowerPoint as well. Great. So I think, okay, let me go through the session outline. So you can see what's coming up. So done the introduction. First, we will have a presentation on emergency response preparedness by the UN and its partners in Pakistan. Then Blandina will share her experiences on strengthening local early warning systems in urban settings in Kenya. And then we'll look at how we finance preparedness, looking at kind of forecast-based financing and preparedness through resilience, and that will be led by Donna. And then we'll have some time for questions and answers. And before I hand over to Hussein, it would be really interesting to see which preparedness or resilience programs you're working on. So if you can share in the chat kind of the programs that you're part of, so we learn more about you, that would be really great. Yeah, I think that's all from me right now. I will hand over to Hussein for the first presentation. So if I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then Hussein can start sharing his. Okay.
Yes, meanwhile, I will also can you see my screen now?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Excellent.
But we can also
Yes,
see the notes, so it's not full screen.
It's not full screen?
Not at the moment.
We can see the notes part
Yeah.
rather than
It's popping up, or what's the...
So I don't know if this icon maybe with that.
maybe, I'm not sure.
So I'm not really sure how that works, but
It is the full screen, or... Oh,
If you just close end slideshow and go to full slideshow.
can I... can you see it now, or you can't see it?
so it's still in the same form. It's still in the same form. So it's kind of half a screen. Oh, okay.
Can I try it again?
Yes, please do. Yep.
Can you see it now? Sorry.
We can see your desktop.
Okay. Let me... Now?
No. Gary, do you want to do it from here?
So Hussein, I have the presentation on my laptop. I can, if you prefer, I can share
Yes.
it. Oh,
If you, yeah, that's fine. If you can share, if you
Can
can
we do
share.
that? Okay, so if you, okay. Okay.
I will stop sharing from here.
Okay, perfect. Okay, here we go. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, you can just tell me when to move to the next slide.
Yeah, I'm sorry for this. From
No
this.
problem.
Yeah. We'll just ask you for your support to go to just go through it. My focus is actually on Pakistan, but emergency response preparedness is a global IAC drafted guidelines, still in draft, but it is the replacing the previous guidelines, and we have been using it in Pakistan. So it is about all the United Nations, OCHA, humanitarian country, and its partners, including the government and humanitarian partners, how they are working and implementing it in Pakistan, and how we are collaborating on a range of issues related to preparedness in Pakistan. So we'll just next. Yeah. So before going to the to highlight the ERP approach, I will just highlight a number of just few things on the vulnerability of Pakistan, so you can understand the context we are working here in Pakistan, and how we are making efforts to strengthen the coordinated and joint preparedness efforts in Pakistan. So, most of the humanitarian aid partners are aware of the Pakistan's vulnerability to a range of natural disaster. Pakistan is one of the most affected countries in terms of human losses and damages in the natural disasters around the world. It is one of the top 10 countries which are most vulnerable to the effect of climate change, and it has significant fault lines from the east to west and north to south. And the three major plates are meeting here, are meeting each other in the center of the country. So you can understand the natural disasters, kind of epicenter. The climate-induced events has been resulting, losses of $3.9 billion per year. So you can understand the losses and damages, which is causing economic losses. And the three major disasters in the last 1 decade or so have affected 32 million people, and some of them are still recovering back to their normal lives. They are most vulnerable people, they are most vulnerable communities, and they are mostly affected again and again by the similar kind of, especially with regard to flood. So this is very briefly on the vulnerabilities. Next. This the recent multi-hazard vulnerability assessment in DMA with the support of partners conducted, and it shows the risking of different districts with the population to earthquake. Next. Risk ranking for floods in Pakistan with the population density, administrative boundaries, and risk ranking you can see in this. In terms of flooding, this is based on historical data as well as the landscape and a number of other indicators which are used jointly by WFP and NDMA and number of partners. Next. Well, just provide you a little bit background on the new emergency response preparedness approach and how it is different from the previous interagency contingency planning process, which was the guidelines from the IAC, and the interagency contingency planning was issued in 2017, and we have been using those guidelines. But the major difference I will highlight, especially if you see this, the preparedness is not a revolutionary process. It is an evolutionary process, and driven by the needs and by the context. And that's why lesson learning from from Haiti, from Philippines, from Pakistan, pushed the IAC task force on preparedness and resilience to develop something new which can address the current needs. And that's how in 2005 and 2015, the new IAC guidelines on the emergency response preparedness were launched for testing in field. It is still a draft, but most of the countries are implementing it, especially the humanitarian country team and the United Nations country teams in different areas. Initially, the IAC, the previous IAC interagency contingency planning process was attempting to plan for the whole response cycle from the sudden onset to relief and recovery, and planning or attempting to plan for something which is unforeseen for a longer time, and that longer term unforeseen situation planning, they were missing the initial life-saving time critical response. So the ERP offers an overall framework for response readiness, but focusing on initial phase of emergency for initial 4 to 6 weeks to be ready to deliver the most critical and life-saving aids at the earliest. So the ERP approach has designed for a potential scale of the emergency which may require a coordinated response from the humanitarian community. It is not for large scale localized response or localized assistance, but this is focusing on a larger scale coordinated humanitarian response supporting the national response. So this is just to understand. Next. We'll talk how the cycle within 10 minutes. I cannot explain very in detail, but however the emergency response preparedness approach is focusing in the peacetime to build on the minimum preparedness actions. Minimum preparedness actions is a set of many actions which doesn't cost the humanitarian country team and the UN country team a lot, in the humanitarian country and humanitarian partner in the country too much, but it is putting system and the procedures in place, so it is then easy to scale up to an advanced level. Same time, you continue to analyze the risk and monitor the risk. The first thing, you have to identify the hazards, the risk, then continue to monitor the risk while you are implementing the minimum preparedness actions. Then once the threats are becoming imminent, if you see the risk ranking inform you about, guide you about the risk level, and it is going from a low risk level to a moderate risk level or to high, then it guides you towards an implementation of advanced preparedness actions, which is just getting you ready to deliver the humanitarian assistance once the disaster hits. So it is more appropriate in hydrometeorological hazards, mostly in flood and weather related or the climate change related, but not for very relevant to the sudden onset of earthquake, which doesn't provide you that much opportunity to go from one stage to another. However, there are a number of actions which you can put in place and which can better prepare you. Then once the disaster strikes, the next stage then to to go for a response planning or a flash appeal. This is based on very strong partnership among the partners, and risk assessment, minimum preparedness actions implementation, continued monitoring of the risk, going from the minimum preparedness actions to the advanced preparedness actions, and from the advanced preparedness actions to the contingency planning, and then to the response. Next. This is how one technical component on the risk ranking, how to, and it is not only for this disaster management contingency planning, it could be applied on different contexts. The people are using it in different assessments, risk assessment. The formula for this is to, the likelihood is multiplied by the impact, and that's how you come up with the risk. And if the risks are, on one side, if you see the likelihood and the impact, the likelihood of different, just I will give an example, it is mostly based on a number of indicators, but the historical, historical background of any earthquake or floods or whatever, and then the impact and that specific area for which it could be provincial level, it could be district level, or it could be national or regional level. And then when you see that the risk is becoming more than 7 or from 8 to 14, you go for the implementation of advanced preparedness actions. And once you see from 15 to 25, you have to then start responding to the situation. The threshold for such situation is 10, and but it is context relevant, contextualized. Now, this is not the only indicator for, which guide you towards from minimum to advanced level. You also need to consider the capacity, and other formula for that is the hazard are multiplied by vulnerability and then divided by capacity, and that also determine, because we have to see the existing capacity of the government, of the partners who can respond to the situation. In some of the country, for example, Pakistan is very relevant example for that. The risks are for some of the disasters are very high, but we can also see a very high capacity of the government, which has been, responding to 4.8 million people in past without request from international assistance. So these are contextualized, but main thing is the likelihood and impact, which can help you understanding the risk. Next. This is how it has been implemented in the region, the Asia Pacific region, especially with our regional office in Bangkok. They have this guidance for country level or regional level. When you see that the risks are high and you have to implement advanced preparedness actions, then you have to run a disaster impact model. For example, flooding, monsoon flooding can be analyzed. The number of people could be affected. What could be the priority needs of the people, and then what kind of response it will need. What are the existing capacities, and what response minus capacities, then that will help you in analyzing the gaps to identify, and then to start planning in advocacy to address those needs. So this is how the cycle for the implementation of minimum preparedness action and advanced preparedness action. And if you see the red in between, the need assessment and analysis and strategic planning. So it is also very closely linked with the humanitarian program cycle, especially for those countries who have protected situations and they continue to Otherwise, in the peace time, it is just to be ready. And then, if there are no situation, no disaster, you test the system, you conduct a simulation exercise, and you strengthen the minimum preparedness actions. Next. Here, most of the partners, while coexist and working in a very collaborative manner, especially in Pakistan, the United Nations Country Team, the DRR Forum, START Network, a number of other development and humanitarian partners are very closely working with each other. This is in line with IAC guidelines, especially on the common framework for preparedness, which brings coherence through the coordination of a range of actors towards achieving resilience, including enhancing emergency preparedness. And the humanitarian development collective outcomes reduces people's need, risk, and vulnerabilities, and increasing their resilience, requiring combined efforts for different actors. This especially work in a situation where there are already ongoing humanitarian response. There are efforts by the humanitarian partners, which is mostly focused on the humanitarian emergency response preparedness. And there are other efforts by the development partners who are more focused on the disaster reduction. The gray area or the common area for resilience to working together is a very natural linkages between the humanitarian and development, and it is in accordance with a new way of working. So here at the country level, the humanitarian or the resident coordinator office should is playing a role in linking the different efforts between the humanitarian partners and development partners. For example, the emergency response preparedness team in Pakistan is very closely working with the SPA3, which is the United Nations Development Assistance Framework, or the United Nations Development in the new disaster sustainable development framework. So they are working together to ensure that there is a harmonization of efforts. Next. This is a very quick example from how the different partners are working together. The NDMA, with the support of the National Disaster Management Authority, with the support of a number of humanitarian or development partners, conducted the multi-hazard vulnerability assessment for the country, which is used by the humanitarian partners, by the development partners, and by the government. And for the humanitarian partners, they are pre-positioning their stocks. They are in most vulnerable areas which are identified through the MHVRA. They are conducting capacity building programs. They are focusing on due diligence in the most vulnerable areas. Especially, I can tell you about the Pakistan humanitarian funds and the DRR programs for the development partners, which is contributing to enhance preparedness. Next. This is the multi-sector initial rapid assessment guidelines, which are recently endorsed by the National Disaster Management Authority, and they are used as a primary tool for coordinated assessments. Recently, NDMA has requested for undertaking a capacity building programs for 42 districts which are identified most vulnerable districts, and through collaborative networking and collaborative programming, OCHA, PHF, Pakistan Humanitarian Forum, National Humanitarian Network, IOM, CARE Fund, the SES transforming program, STP, there is a start network, and there is a IRC who are supporting their respective areas in this program. The close coordination between these partners are helping the government capacity to implement MIRA in future and nationalizing MIRA at district and provincial and national level. Next. There are a number of efforts through collaborative programs and projects, especially the cash working group, who is implementing preparedness actions to enable use of cash transfer program in future emergencies. There are stakeholders analysis they have conducted. They are conducting wage rate harmonization, and the cash working group and StartNet network are conducting trainings for partners on cash transfer programming in emergency. Cash working group is also taking stocks of partners in the cash transfer program interventions through a 4W mapping to guide the cash preparedness. OCHA is also supporting National Disaster Management Authority in developing strategic guidelines on the use of cash in emergency in Pakistan. So these are the efforts to support the cash interventions in the future. Next. There are, while there are a number of challenges to bring together a range of different partners, diverse partners in the humanitarian preparedness and response approaches and planning process. However, there are a need for better understanding the risk and the context for programmatic plannings and interventions in any given regional or national situations. Understanding and supporting and building upon existing coping strategies to ensure a self-driven community-based resilience efforts at the community level, and a two-pronged approach, building communities' resilience from one side to enable their resilience, but at the same time to strengthen the emergency response preparedness efforts for in timely manner in early action. Coordination is key in this whole process, and specifically with those who are expected to be part of the response in future. They need to be coordinated now, so they are well coordinated. There is no single actors or sector which can strengthen the longer-term resilience of vulnerable household and communities by acting alone. It needs holistic and coordinated approach to explore and collaborate opportunities with the partners. This is it from my side, and I took more time, I think. But any questions, any comments are welcome on this. Or if you could share any of your experience in relevant situation.
Great, thank you, Hussein. That was great and raised some really, really interesting points. I think that will lead you to things around coordination and collaboration and really looking to build those networks and respond in a collaborative way. I think that will actually lead quite nicely into Blandina's presentation. So what I will do, yeah, good point. So if anybody wants to ask some questions on this presentation, please type them in the chat, and then we'll leave some time at the end to come back to these. So yeah, please do share your comments and questions. Yes, we already have a couple we can see. We'll come back to them. Thank you again, Hussein. That was really great. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'll ask Blandina to begin with her presentation. Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Perfect. Blandina?
I'm here.
Great. Okay.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much, Hussein, for your presentation. It was very informative. I'm going to present about strengthening preparedness at local level in urban settings. And please, if you hear any background noise, just bear with me. We just had today declared a national holiday, so I'm working from home. So the photo you see there is one of the biggest informal settlements in Africa, and it's actually in Kenya. It's called Kibra. It's one of the areas that the project I'm going to present is being implemented. And so if you're wondering like why we're focusing on urban areas, I want to throw the question back to you. Like where you're joining us from, or from whichever region you are, do you have disasters in the urban areas? You can just type your answers on the chat.
So I think we have a lot of yeses to that question.
And, let me see that.
Blandina, are you still here? Hello?
We've lost her.
I think we've lost her. Okay, then I propose that we move into Donna's presentation, and we can come back to Blandina's when she rejoins us. Donna, is that okay with you?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, just in the interest of time, and I'll message Blandina separately, and we'll say that we've done that. Okay, sorry, unexpected happening, but technical issues. We have to cooperate. Okay, over to you, Donna.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone from Manila. Happy to be part of this webinar and to share with you some of the initiatives that we are doing in the Red Cross Red Crescent family to help us prepare more. But first, I would like to introduce myself again. So I'm Donna from the Red Cross Red Crescent Climate Center. I'm based in Manila and I support the Asia Pacific region and also the global and regional policy discussions that the Red Cross is involved in. So just some bits of trivia. So the Red Cross Red Crescent family is present in 190 countries. And as you all know, currently we are the largest humanitarian organizations with, I think, 7 million volunteers on the ground and thousands of chapters supporting the national societies globally. So within this Red Cross Red Crescent family, we also have reference centers. These global reference centers were established, I think, around the early 2000s to specialize on specific technical matters. And the Climate Center is one of these existing global reference centers that the Red Cross system has. So the role of the reference centers is to take to closer look on specific technical matters and support the entire system on how to improve our work on the ground in terms of livelihoods, shelter, volunteer work, first aid, and climate change. So the Climate Center is a global technical reference center and we're a virtual team where the picture you see on the screen is the latest picture, but we're not complete there. We just had our annual team meeting that was held in Amsterdam 2 or 3 weeks ago. Climate Center was created in 2002 as part of the commitment of the Federation to really mainstream climate and science into the way we do things on the ground. And we support the movement to understand and address humanitarian consequences of climate change and extreme and even slow onset events. Aside from being the technical reference center in the Federation, we are also very active in the scientific community, in the think tank community, and we are a mixture of scientists, policy advocates, and policy practitioners, and the on the ground practitioners on climate and community work. So in essence, the work of the Climate Center really tries to bridge the science, policy, and practice nexus. And this bridging of science, policy, and practice helps us to develop tools, approaches to support the national societies on the ground. So one of the tools that we have developed, and I would be focusing on two specific tools and approaches that we are promoting globally to help us in our preparedness work amidst the changing landscape of risk that the communities are facing. So the first tool that I'm sharing with you is called the minimum standards for local climate smart disaster risk reduction. This was developed around 6 years ago, I think, and it was even tested in Indonesia and the Philippines as part of our global program called Partners for Resilience. The minimum standards is, I'll be happy to share the link later on, but in essence, it is a set of two sets of actions for the NGO community and for local governments to help them really identify actions to make their risk reduction climate smart and put science into it. It is like a sequence of activities, very simple ones, but very effective ones that will actually lead. And the end is the hope of this minimum standards is in the end, people can really not only identify the risks that they're facing, the short, medium, and long term, but really are able to act upon it, understand it, and also improve their activities and lives on the ground based on this better understanding and awareness of the climate smart actions on risk reduction. It's, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it has 11 points of action that countries and national societies and even local governments are currently using to help them in their mainstreaming efforts. The other, aside from developing tools like this, we also are very, very known for our interactive approaches. We do a lot of games, and these are all in the website. Hello?
डायरेक्ट उसमें मैं अभी पार्टिसिपेट करूंगा.
Could I just ask everybody except Donna to mute?
Hello?
Okay, Donna, back to you. Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. So as I was saying, aside from tools like this, we also develop games, interactive approaches, policy papers, a lot of publications that show the link of the science, policy, and practice. And we've developed recently an approach which we call forecast-based financing. So forecast-based financing was actually tested early 2000, but we just massively pilot tested this globally together with our partners, the German Red Cross, the Netherlands Red Cross, and now even the Finnish, the Swiss, the British Red Cross, and several other national societies are helping us realize the concept of forecast-based financing. In GIST, forecast-based financing is an improved version of early warning system, wherein the mechanism allows us to release humanitarian funding based on forecast information to be able to fund planned activities, what that reduce risks. So the essence of FBF is the biggest dilemma of humanitarian organizations is that we are able to access funding after the fact. We can see the forecast, we know the risks on the ground, we do a lot of vulnerability capacity on the ground, we work closely with the weather forecasters. However, we cannot do actions in advance in a very timely and timely manner to really help that very short window of time between the forecast and the actual disaster. And so we are promoting this mechanism to really help us bridge that gap and link and help humanitarian organizations to have more capacity to address the evolving risks, the rising risks that we face because of the changing climate. FBF can be applied either in a drought situation, in floods, in El Nino and La Nina setting, even in dam operations. So it's really a concept of how we can make our efforts more in terms of strengthening anticipatory capacities. And if you do it in the longer term, it even can be an approach to increase adaptive capacities. So to help us understand more what forecast-based financing is, I play a little game with all of you. I hope how do you put this back? I'll play a quick game with all of you, and it's like a quiz. So I'd like you to please type your answer. If it's true or false, write T or F, or if it's a multiple choice, just type the letter of the answer. And I will explain FBF through this quiz and this approach. I hope this is good with all. And I'm assuming that because we are all forced to be very silent, and I assume that everyone is okay with that. All right, first question. Just hearing the term forecast-based financing, what do you think are the main components of this financing mechanism? Is it A, menu of triggers, available funding, early actions, SOPs, B, C, or D? Quick answer, anyone? Great. Majority answered A, and this is actually the correct answer. For forecast-based financing to work, you need to first really bring together all the key stakeholders, whether this is at the national, regional, or global level. Key stakeholders mean you have the community, the decision makers, the weather forecasters, the scientists, and other non-state actors. And together you identify actions, the SOPs, based on thresholds. So you'll have a menu of thresholds with specific actions and the corresponding amount to be able to do those actions. So this set of SOPs and early warnings with the corresponding amount that you would need would be key to FBF. And so you cannot do FBF only when the say the typhoon or the drought is already days before. It really needs it's anchoring on a very strong risk-centered approach, and then you match that with the menu of triggers. So once you hit the threshold, and then automatically can do the actions because you already have the funding to do so. So that's the essence, and you don't need to bring together again decision makers. Okay, this is the forecast. What do we do? A, B, and C, because you already have a plan. So it's automatic. Next question. Forecast-based financing is the same as an insurance mechanism. What do you think? This is a usual question that is asked from us every time we present this. Is it true or false? Looks like this group is already familiar with FBF. So FBF is indeed not an insurance mechanism, but it adopts the metrics approach of the insurance mechanism because we need to get the money before the risk becomes a disaster. Is early warning systems concept linked to FBF? I think I gave away this answer already before I started. A, B, C, E or D? I would assume that fantastic. Great. Okay, I should stop presenting because you all know the answers already. It is indeed part of the early warning system concept. And this is why we see forecast-based financing as really anchored as well in the resilience framing. Early warning system is recognized, which is based on risk analysis, and then resilience, which is also the same as resilience. And risk by default is very strong in these 4 global agendas. And FBF, as I said, is the way we see FBF is that this will help us bridge the gap, and this will help us operationalize the coherence approach of all these agreements on the ground, that people will really feel, and that we will be able to really achieve our ambitions, not only in terms, and not looking at it as something that's standalone. FBF needs to be mainstream. The resilience aspect needs to be mainstream, and so does the other components of FBF. So it is and because it's an enhanced early warning system approach, it is linked with Sendai and WHS and the rest. All right, 5 minutes. Okay, so I will now just give you the answers to the questions, so we'll be faster. Which funding mechanism would be useful for FBF? Actually, you can have a million options for this. We are seeing helping the donors change the mindset of when they will actually release the funding. Even the government institutionalized funding can adopt the FBF mechanism, social protection, even pooled funds. You can really have an array of options on how to operationalize forecast-based financing. We also really see that the FBF is an important component of FBF is to see it as part of the institutional mechanisms in government, and that help us to sustain it, not to be really dependent on donors, but really in local governments releases their funds, national governments use their calamity funds, and so on. It started the approach back in West Africa in 2008, but it just massively was piloted in 2015 in Uganda and Peru. Today, we have 20 plus pilots of FBF, and we are exploring tons of funding structures and opportunities with the with a wider range of partners, and happy to share this detail with you if you're interested. So this diagram can show you really how it is done. We need to understand the risk scenario, identify the forecast, the danger level, formulate the actions to have a set of SOP, and then validate the protocols with the actors and continue to monitor. A very strong role of the Hydromet office is very essential in the FBF. However, there have been a lot of lessons learned since we started piloting FBF, and one of which is really that it cannot be applied in a small community. It needs to be embedded in long-term structures and institutional mechanisms in country or the region to really feel the effect of FBF. It needs to have a robust set of evidence in terms of forecast verification and so on and so forth. And it needs really tons of capacity for not only national societies, but a lot of partners. A quick example, in Asia Pacific, we have FBF operating on the ground. And with our efforts in FBF, we really saw the reduction in terms of losses, and how by investing in FBF, we can really save money and also really help the most vulnerable communities on the ground. We have lessons in FBF. We see that it will really be effective if we scale it up, do specific actions on the ground, and have innovative solutions for people to understand it, own it, and really have a change of mindset about things. This diagram just simply shows how it can be institutionalized, and this is something that we are fully rolling out in different countries in the region and globally. So that, ladies and gentlemen, are just two examples of what we are doing in the Red Cross Red Crescent family in terms of preparedness actions, and happy to hear any questions later on. To you.
Thank you, Donna. That was really great, and sorry that you had to rush that, but I'm conscious that it's almost 11 o'clock. If anybody has any questions for Donna, please do type them in the chat. We'd really be interested to hear. So Blandina is back online. I'm just wondering, I think what we'll do, we know that it's almost 11 o'clock, so I think we're going to run over. Just, I think we'll keep going for another 15 minutes maybe. So anybody, if you have to go, that's totally fine. We appreciate your time, we understand, and sorry for the delay. I'm just wondering, should we go back? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Blandina to go into her presentation, and then we'll come back to questions for Hussein and to Donna. Okay, so Blandina, if you're back with us, over to you.
Sorry everyone, sorry about the technical hitch. I will try to rush through because of the time. I think, I'm not sure if I talked about this, so I'll just run through it because I don't know where I went off really. So basically what the Urban Early Warning Early Action Project is trying to achieve is to pilot appropriate indicators that will mitigate slow onset emergencies, and this is food insecurity in the informal settlements of Nairobi. So we're establishing a system that is going to monitor this, which is going to be coordinated by the government. We're also trying to lobby and get buy-in from the national government, the county government, and the humanitarian actors and the donor for them to be aware of this disaster that is happening in the urban areas and for them to act on it, and basically to reduce the impact of food insecurity on the urban poor. Key successes of the team of the system so far: we have a set of indicators that we are using to monitor food security situation in the urban areas, and these started with a 5-year research project that was basically trying to come up with indicators that would be appropriate for food insecurity or for food security situation in the urban areas. The IPC phase classification indicators mainly focus on rural areas, and some of the elements that they monitor really cannot be monitored in the urban areas. Things like livelihoods. So when you talk of livelihoods in the rural areas, you're basically talking about farming, you're basically talking about livestock, or when you come to the informal settlements or the urban areas, the main source of livelihood for most people is employment or businesses. So really you can't see how monitoring of livelihoods would inform you if there's a food security situation. And then the other success that we have achieved so far is that the county government, we got into a memorandum of understanding with them, and they have agreed to jointly implement the project with us. So even as we are carrying the surveillance, even as we are implementing some of the activities, we do it alongside the county government officials. Key challenges, or two main key challenges that we have experienced so far, is that there is lack of appropriate policies that support that addressing of slow onset emergencies. And so in this case, for Nairobi County, the disaster and emergency management bill is silent on food security. It's not, or food insecurity is not acknowledged as a disaster. So as we implement this project, we're also trying to push that the government makes changes on this document to include food security, and then this gives them the mandate to even budget for it and even put it in their activities. And then there's also very little awareness or information on food insecurity in the urban areas. So even as we lobby and advocate for donors and other stakeholders to acknowledge that this is happening, most of the time they would ask, so what facts do you have? And then you realize that there's no information out there, except most of the information comes from what we have been able to implement or what we have gotten from the project. So there's not much awareness on it. And this is also one of the action points, or one of the areas that we're really focusing on, to raise the awareness of this and to advocate and make people aware that this is happening. So key recommendations when implementing this kind of a project, I would say keep the community at the core. And as a project, we have what we call the Urban Early Warning, Early Action Ambassadors, and we're trying to empower them and facilitate them to present some of these issues to the government. We don't want to tell their story. We want them to tell the story on behalf of the larger community so that it comes from the horse's mouth. Second key recommendation is be aware of the awareness creation. When we started the project, we really thought it's going to be easy. You just go to a meeting or a forum with stakeholders and you tell them, these are the issues, this is what we need to do. But then, considering we're really trying to bring the government on board, or the local government on board, most of the times it's politicized. Like, they wouldn't want to acknowledge that such issues are there because they know that would reflect negatively on them. So the awareness creation took really long, and the project is time bound. So there's so much time that was taken just to make them accept and be a part of this. And then we're saying also focus efforts on the low-hanging fruits. So even as you implement and you have a big objective out there that you want to achieve, there are small wins as you go along that you really need to focus on. And also realize that some of these objectives need to be anchored in the laws and policies, because most of the argument or most of the dialogue we've had with them, they would challenge us. So you tackle something, an issue on the table, and the argument would be, is this in the laws? Is this in the policies anywhere? If it's not mentioned, then that gives them a right not to implement it. So we're really pushing to ensure that some of these issues are captured in the laws and the policies that govern the county government. And lastly, it's very important to network with the region that you're working in, because urban disasters manifest themselves in different dimensions. It's not like the rural areas where areas are sparsely populated and if there is a flood, some people will be affected and some will not be affected. In the urban areas, it's densely populated, and when you have floods, you're also talking about diseases, you're talking about issues to do with shelter. When there's diseases, there's obviously malnutrition, so you need health practitioners coming in. So if you network, then everybody's able to bring their expertise on the table and tackle these disasters from different angles. And that's it from me.
Oh, thank you, Blandina. Wow, that was super quick, an express presentation. Let me just go back to sharing my screen. So I want to say thank you to all of our speakers for that. And I think there's some really common themes emerging. Even though we had three very different perspectives and three very different angles, I think things around obviously coordination, collaboration, and really working at the local level, that seemed to be kind of common to all three presentations. Okay, finally on to questions. So we have a couple in the chat. The first one, I think Shahana asked to Hussein. So the question is from Shahana in Bangladesh, and she says, I'm very curious to know, what was the key success factor for a well-coordinated approach? As in Bangladesh, we are struggling with a coordinated approach. So Hussein, if you are still here, that's a question for you.
Yeah, Pakistan is a country with ongoing humanitarian response and protracted emergency. We have a well-established coordination mechanism in place. The cluster coordination is working in one place, in north of the country, and the national level we have the humanitarian country team, which include the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement as an observer. PHF is a member, the Pakistan Humanitarian Forum, which is which have around more than 50 to 60 organizations, all the international organizations mostly. And then the National Humanitarian Network, which is composed of around 200 national NGOs, and very closely working with the National Disaster Management Authority and Provincial Disaster Management Authority. So that's why we have privileged positions to, in terms of preparedness, that it is well coordinated here. However, we understand that there is now an ongoing emergency in Bangladesh, responding to the refugees crisis. So they will be also having kind of a humanitarian country team in place, clusters coordination. Maybe the refugees response is different from the IDP's response. So that might be a bit different, where the lead is with UNHCR. That's the refugees model. But this need very close, and not only within the humanitarian community, but how the development partners and the humanitarian partners can work together, and how the development and humanitarian can closely work with the government. It is also building upon the national vision. For example, we have a 2025 vision, a Pakistan 2025 vision, which is in line with the SDGs, with a number of international frameworks. So, aligning these international efforts to these existing frameworks also help you in better coordinating the development and humanitarian nexus and preparedness and resilience efforts.
Great, thank you. So Shahana, I hope you have your answer. That's really great. Thank you for that really comprehensive answer, Hussein. And I wonder, I guess if anybody has other questions for the speakers, I wonder if you can contact them as well. I haven't asked them, but maybe that's also an option if you have further questions. Do we have anything else? Let me see. So Shahana, so just one more thing. Everybody, so there is a question. So Donna's response to the difference between forecast-based financing and DRR. So that's just, there's a conversation happening in the chat right now where Donna's provided her answer. And do we have any other questions? Okay, so we have one more question. Do we have any questions for Blandina? And I know her presentations. Okay, let's have a look. Sorry, just bear with me 1 second. Okay, so there's a question about any experiences of ensuring food security in urban settings in case of general disasters, when the communication with the outer region is blocked. So Blandina, do you have any examples of that? Where if you cannot communicate with the outer region, how can you ensure food security in the urban setting in the case of a disaster?
I was just checking if my mic is muted. Okay, so basically the experience we've had for us, we've had droughts where the areas that are producing food are usually not able then to produce food for even people in the urban areas to buy. So most of the things that people will ask for in terms of livelihood for them, I mean, it's because the food prices go high, and then the source of income or whatever they're getting from the casual jobs that they're doing is usually very small to even support them in meeting their needs. So usually what they're asking for, what they ask of us is ways of them to get, employment, meaningful employment. And most of them are usually exploited because in any urban setting or in any informal settlements, usually you would find that the neighboring area is usually a very wealthy neighborhood where these people work, and they're usually exploited. So what we're also doing is to try and advocate for them, for their wages for them to be paid according to the jobs that they do. So working with these wealthier neighborhoods or their employers and tell them, these people, this is what they deserve, and this is what the government says that somebody should earn maybe in a day or in a month. So we're trying to work to ensure that their wages are raised, so that in the event that even the rural areas are unable to produce these foods, then whatever that is available is usually very expensive. whatever they get is able to at least meet some of these needs.
Okay, Blandina?
Yes.
Okay, great. Was that, oops. Sorry, had you finished? Did I interrupt you? I wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm finished.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. There are a few more questions on the chat specifically for Hussein. I know that we're already running over, so I wonder if he could share them. I don't know. So if the speakers are happy, we can share email addresses. Yeah. Or potentially continue these conversations in the discussion forum on the learning platform. That's a good idea. If everybody is happy with that, just because of time, I think probably that's the best approach. So we acknowledge that there are questions. We're not ignoring them, but I think it's probably time to wrap up. And we can. Let's put these questions in the learning forum. And let me have a look. So there are already a couple of discussions, as you can see on the screen right now. So these discussions are already on the learning forum. If you just click on the links, they will take you right to the forum and you can share your answers. And what we'll do when we send out the recording of this session, as well as the speakers' presentations, we'll add those questions in for the speakers to share their answers. So yes, I would like to thank everybody, especially for staying longer than 11 o'clock. We've had some really interesting discussions. Thank you so much for all your participation, and especially for the presentations that we had. And as I said, we'll share those. You'll get an email this afternoon probably, or tomorrow, with everything that, all the resources that are here. So we're back next Wednesday, and we'll be looking at the localization of learning. So specifically, the key enablers and blockers to capturing and sharing learning at the local level. And I think my colleagues Diane Rodriguez from the Philippines and Alice Hale will be facilitating that, and they'll be joined by a number of panelists, and it will be more of a panel discussion rather than presentations, as far as I understand. So it should be a really fantastic session, and yeah, very excited to hear that. If you have any questions at all at any time, please get in touch. The email address is deplearning@actionagainsthunger.org.uk. Yes, and that's it from us, I think. Thank you once again to everybody. And yeah, we look forward to continuing these conversations on the forum. Okay, see you all soon. Bye-bye.